Life is full of surprises, so are your cash flows. In this setting, you have uneven cash flows distributed among the years. In the first year, you have $100. In the second and third years, you have a bigger cash flow at 300. And in the fourth year, you even have some loss. This setting is different from our previous exercise, where we have a fixed amount of payment distributed for each period. And we cannot use the same old trick with a payment and then solve for the time value of money. And right here, I want to introduce you the net present value function. And net basically means the positive and negative are canceling each other. Present value basically means for each of the future cash flows here, you have 4. You're gonna discount each of them to the present value with the interest rate. For example, the first $100 distributed by 10% would get you $90. And the $300 discounted for 2 years would get you $247. And the next 300 discounted for 2 years with a 10% interest would get a lower value at 225. And then you're gonna add them up. As I said, the negative and the positive would cancel each other, so you would have the net present value. This is how you do it in Excel. You're gonna use the NPV function, and the first input is the interest rate. And then you are going to select the future cash flows from 1 to 4. I have to be very specific because you need to know your very first cash flow is the cash flow in year 1, not in year 0. In some later practices, we will have some values for cash flow 0, and that cash flow 0 should be outside the NPV function, outside the parentheses here. But right now, you don't have to worry about that part yet. The next subject is about nominal rate, and it is also quite an important idea because depending on the compounding method, your future cash flow could be different even though you have the same nominal stated annual rate. Like here, we have an 8% annual rate, and it can be compounded either quarterly, like 4 times a year, or daily, like 365 times in a year. And in our profession of finance, when an interest rate is given to you, no matter 2%, 8%, or 20%, by default, we always assume it is an annual rate. It is an interest rate occurred per annum, per year. And when we apply different compounding method there, my future cash flow could be different. If I just take the steps one by one, you could see that if I get my periodical rate, then the 8% annual rate would be 2% rate per quarter, or 0.021918% per day. And how does that apply to the calculation of future cash flow? Will the future cash flow be larger or smaller if we compound it more often, holding the interest rate constant? So when I say compounding more often, definitely daily compounding is more frequent than monthly compounding, and the monthly compounding is more frequent than quarterly compounding, and so forth. So definitely, if your compounding frequency increases, you will end up with a larger future cash flow. And here is the formula to solve for the future value based on the same present value and the same nominal given quoted stated interest rate. And right here, the M stands for the frequency, and the N stands for the number of years. So if you use M times N, then this is the number of periods. Let's take this one for example. You have $100 invested at 12% nominal rate for 5 years, and it's a semi-annual compounding. Your M equals to 2 because it's semi-annual, half a year, so you have a 2 semi-annual period in a year. So you're going to divide the annual 12% rate by 2 and get your 6-month semi-annual rate. And when you do the compounding, your total number of periods is not 5. You have a 10 semi-annual periods in 5 years. And then you do the calculation, get your future value. And this value definitely will be larger than you just use 100 times 12% raised to the fifth. Okay, so if you just do annual compounding, as I just said, $100 times 1 plus 12% to the fifth, this is how much future value you would get. If you do the semi-annual compounding, 12 is divided by 2, and your number of periods will double, and you end up with more future value. If you do the quarterly compounding, then 12% would give you 3% per quarter. Then you have a 20 quarters in 5 years, and you would get an even larger future flow. As the frequency increases from up to the bottom, you can see that your future cash flow would get larger and larger. And this idea is called a effective annual rate, and that has an important implication in our finances and investment. The effective annual rate is the rate we're gonna look at the very end, no matter what the given rate is. And you also need to be very careful what position you're taking here. If you're an investor, you look at the effective annual rate, then you want the rate to be as high as possible. As investors, we want a higher return. And if you are a borrower, let's say you're financing your house and you borrow mortgage, you want the effective annual rate to be as low as possible, so you could pay lower interest rate. The bottom line is we always look at effective rate instead of the given quoted rate. You can use your calculator to do the practice or use Excel, the mathematical formula to do the practice. But what is really easy here is using the effect function of Excel. Let's take this one, for example, the 12% nominal rate would give you 12.36% effective rate if we do semi-annual compounding. So let me just open up Excel, and it is quite easy to do the job. So what is your effective annual rate with a 12% nominal rate and semi-annual frequency? So you just simply use the effect, all right? One word, and then you put a 12%, and then number of periods per year is here. And then you hit the enter, and that's done. So you don't have to do multiplication or exponential calculation. You just need to use the effect function, nice and easy. So what is really challenging here is to accept the idea that a higher frequency of compounding leads to more effective rate given the same nominal rate.